Hey, what is going on, guys? Greg Jenkins here from MonkeyPod, inside the MonkeyPod worldwide headquarters here in Martinez, California. I have plucked a video from one of my courses to give you just a thorough explanation and exploration of the lead generation part of the software. So specifically, what are visitor records? How do we use them? What are lead sources? How do we use them? What reports do we have? And what information from those reports should we be looking at to make strategic decisions as we guide our business forward? So if you have ever asked any of those questions, you are in the right spot. And this video will show you how to extract the information that the lead generation and lead source aspect of the software makes available for you and for your business. Okay, let's jump in. So here we are under the marketing section in the lead generation area. And by and large, at a high level, this section is designed to tell you where your contacts are coming from. So whether they're coming from Facebook or coming from Twitter or coming from your website or coming from partnerships or any other number of channels, like where is that traffic coming from and at what rate are those anonymous visitors becoming contacts? Are those contacts becoming customers? And what ROI are you earning on the expenses that you might be putting into those different traffic channels, right? So if those are questions you have had, the lead generation section of the software is designed to help you answer them. So let me show you how this all works. It begins with a tracking code. So Keap gives you a unique tracking script. It's right here. You click on Get Tracking Code, you copy this code, and then you add it to your website. You can add it to your website usually using the theme file, because the theme is going to populate on every page. If you have to add it manually to one page at a time, that's fine as well. But usually there's a more efficient way to do that. If you use Google Tag Manager, which I'm not an expert in, but my understanding is you can package together a couple different scripts and then Google Tag Manager loads them all for you when you embed that on specific pages. It works fine like that. I hear sometimes people asking if this is going to work with Google Analytics or if it's going to cause a conflict or if they need both, if it's redundant. Here's what I will say to that. I recommend using both. I use both Google Analytics and Keap Analytics, and here's why. Google Analytics reports at a high level the performance of your website, where people are coming from, how long they're sticking around, what pages they're on, and how much time they're spending there, and the bounce rates for those pages, right? So all of that information is important for your website's health, right? Google Analytics is an invaluable tool. I'm probably underutilizing it, but pretty much every business owner I know uses it and depends on it in some sense, right? But Keap Analytics, on the other hand, is less about the aggregate trends for your website and more about the individual behaviors. So think of it this way. In Google Analytics will count the total number of people who have been to your website and show you trends as it pertains to your website's performance. Keap Analytics will track individual behaviors for what one user is doing. How much time they spend on each page and what pages they view in which order, how many or how frequently they visited your website, etc. Right? And the way that shows up is through what is called visitor records. So you may have remembered a couple videos ago, I talked about the visitor section here under CRM. Another way to access that very same page is by clicking View a Report of Visits to Your Websites. And when you click that, it might show you results, or it might show you this page where you can conduct a new search. Regardless, these visitor records are anonymous. These are people whose name we don't yet know. Okay, so anytime somebody interacts with a page that has your tracking script on it, it will create a visitor record for them. That's why you have this cheeky little question mark on their face, because they are anonymous. And then the important thing to know is that once they become a contact, that visitor record is no longer anonymous, so it actually leaves this section, right? This, if one of these people signs up as a blog subscriber, this number is going to go down from 2178 to 2177 because that visitor record now has been attached to a contact record whose information we know, right? So the reason I say all that, and the reason that, or the way that I recommend using this, is actually not through this section. The visitor section itself, I rarely click on this. I don't think there's a whole lot of valuable information here. Here's why. It shows you things like their screen resolution, or their last visit date, or the browser that they're using, or whether or not they have QuickTime installed or Flash installed, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't find that information very valuable. I'm not going to do a whole lot with that because right now, it just doesn't carry any real substance, right? I do think it is interesting to see their the pages that they view and how much time they spend on it. But in a nutshell, or in a vacuum rather, that information isn't as valuable. There's not a whole lot that you're going to do with an anonymous visitor who was on 2 pages of your website, right? There just isn't a whole lot of actionable information there. But the way that I do use this information is when that visitor becomes a contact record. Because here's the thing. Just because somebody is new to your database, right? Let's take Ron Swanson, for example. If Ron Swanson signed up today, that doesn't mean that we don't have any information about him, right? Just because he signed up today doesn't mean that it was his first time on my website. He very well may have been visiting for the past week or for the past month or for the past several years and reading blog posts and watching webinars and sort of taking his sweet time deciding to opt in for something. So when you look at a contact record, you may not have noticed this, but on the bottom half, there is a web profile section, and the web profile section contains information that was their anonymous visitor record, but now has been attached to their contact record. So to me, this is much more valuable because it is attached to a human. So we now know what this information means, and we can tell the behavior that it drove, right? So think about it this way. If a sale comes in, right? If an order comes in for one of your most expensive products, you could open that contact record, navigate to their web profile, and you could see the pages that they were on leading up to that purchase. Well, they were on this blog post, and then they were on this mini course, and then they, actually that's what happened here. This is a blog post, and then 1 minute later, they were on the mini course opt-in page, and then 13 minutes later, they were on the actual page where the mini course is hosted, and you can see how much time they spent on those pages. So it took this person, this is actually a test contact, but it took me 12 minutes or 13 minutes to opt in. This page has a 3-minute video on it, so what was I doing for the other 10 minutes on that page? And then this course, the Marketing Automation 101 course, it's about 30 minutes long in total. So when I was on that page, I must have crushed through the videos, watching them all, maybe some of them on time and a half play, but it tells a story. And so when you look at a contact record, especially if it's someone who has spent money with you, this could be important and full of lessons because it is the behavior that led to them becoming a contact or becoming a customer. Now, the second thing I'll point out is that while we are here, a contact can have multiple visitor records. So we've got one here. If you scroll down, there's a second one. And if we scroll down again, there is a third one. The reason it works that way is because each visitor record is unique to a device. So if I visited on a phone or on a tablet or on a desktop or on a laptop, right, until I opt in, Keap doesn't know that those visits belong to the same person. So it creates unique visitor records for each anonymous profile. And then as a contact, uses those same devices, Keap is able to say, oh, these visitor records are all the same person. This is all Ron Swanson. This is him on his phone. This is him on his laptop. And it attaches them to the same contact record, giving you a more comprehensive profile of that individual. Now, that's all I want to say about visitor records. That's how they work. I don't use the visitor section for much, but I do use the web profile tab on the contact record to spot check the individual behavior around specific contacts who I am interacting with. Now, back on the lead generation side of things, okay? When I started this, I began by mentioning the ability to track the performance of different traffic channels. And the way that that shows up is through what are called lead sources. So a lead source is a field on the contact record. Let's see if we can find Ron Swanson's lead source. His lead source was monkeypodmarketing.com, and it should capture the initial point of entry to your system, right? Not necessarily the opt-in, but the lead source is oftentimes the referring URL or the page that they were on the first time they interacted with your tracking script, okay? And I point that out because somebody might opt in, like for my mini course, but their lead source may have been set because it was on their user record from a previous visit. So that's an important distinction, is that that lead source represents the initial point of contact, not necessarily the opt-in. Now, you can manually create lead sources. You can view the lead source conversion report, which is actually, this is tied back to the opportunity module. So what this allows you to do is, say, select 2 stages, right? New opportunity and 1. And when you search, it'll show you the number of new opportunities and the number and the percentage that moved on to the next stage. So if you select 2 different stages, it shows you, hey, we had a 25% conversion, and it sorts them by lead source. So for the people who came from, this is an icon event from 2017, 100% of them went from 1 stage to, or new opportunity to the 1 stage. And then for this Facebook ad, the staring contest ad, 2 of them were created and only 1 moved to the 1 stage, right? So I only point this out in case you are using the opportunity pipeline, because this is an important way to be able to report on the performance of your pipeline, but to dissect it or to break it out as it pertains to each individual lead source. Now, from your lead sources section, you can also edit and view lead sources. So if you need to, clean up or reduce lead sources, you can click into that and see what's available. You can search and filter in here by any number of criteria, and you can click into an individual one and assign a description to it, a category, vendor, medium, message, content. Those are just more granular ways to track the information associated there. And then what I find to be really interesting is that you can also, maybe interesting was the wrong word, what I find to be really valuable is that you can also assign a start and end date, right? And the reason that's important is because if this is a promotion, right, unique to a launch, you can add the start and end date, and then you could also associate expenses with it, right? So if this is a paid traffic channel that you're running during a promotion of some sort or during a certain time of year, you can really easily establish the start, end date, and the expenses of that, which brings us to my next point, which is the ability to track the return on your investment, right? If you know what you are spending on specific lead sources, the next natural question is it worth it, right? If I'm spending $1,000 a month, where's my money going? And how many contacts is it producing? And how many of those contacts are becoming customers? And how much are those customers collectively spending? So that's where this section becomes really useful. It's the view leads by source and view leads by source category, right? So I usually start by focusing on the leads by source. This is going to show me or give me the ability to search by lead source ID, so I can filter for a single one. I can filter by a specific date range and say, hey, how are my lead sources performing during the past month? I'm just going to search with no criteria. But before I do, I guess I'll show you the additional criteria here. You can filter by contacts who have a certain tag, or the date that they got that tag, contacts who have a subscription, or the date that they started that subscription. There's things like opportunity stage, web form submitted, products purchased, right? So there's lots of opportunities for filtering down this data. I'm going to start at a super high level and just show you all of the data that this report offers. I will also point out that this is I wanted to show you real data. So this is my live application. These numbers are real. So if we sort this by expenses, you'll see the expenses or the lead sources that I'm spending money on go here, right? At the very top, this is how much money I have spent on Facebook. And then here's the revenue it's producing. And the ROI from that revenue, the number of visitors that it drove, the number of visitors that have become contacts, the percentage of conversion there, the number of contacts that have become customers, the percentage of conversion from contact to customer, as well as the cost per customer. And then over here on the right, it lists the actual lead source. So you could change the columns, you could reorder them, you could remove the ones that are irrelevant, but the information and the story that it tells, I think, is incredibly powerful, because this is how you decide which marketing efforts to double down on and which ones you may want to pull back on. But I do want to call out that, I've got, it says 2,115%, which is just not accurate. Okay. So there is going to be a margin of error on some of these. Here is the reason I think that this number is so inflated. I do a lot of paid marketing on Facebook, but I'm also active organically on Facebook, answering questions, posting content, and, interacting in different groups and stuff. And so for a long time, all of that information was actually together, right? I didn't differentiate. So all of my activity on Facebook was just lumped under Facebook. And it was tough for me to say, well, is this ROI from the $3,000 that I spent on ads, or is it the result of my organic interactions or my organic posting? And there just wasn't a good way for me to tell. So what I eventually have done, or what I wound up doing, is let's do blog. Yeah, there it is. Blog ad, right? I created a unique lead source for each one of my paid ad sets. So here's the blog ad that I created, right? And you can see that this specific ad, I have spent $1,200 on. It has earned $6,000 in revenue, which is a 400% ROI. That's still great, but it's a little more reasonable than the 2,000% that we saw previously. It does not create visitors because that lead source is only set after the contact is opted in, right? So the way that this works is I pass the lead source ID from the ad to the landing page, and then it, when the contact opts in, it establishes the lead source for that contact record. I actually have a whole blog post on that particular topic. If you are interested, search the Monkey Pod blog for Facebook ROI tracking, and then you can see the number of contacts it has created and the percent of those contacts that have become customers, and then the cost per customer. Now, in a vacuum, this information isn't all that useful. Well, it's still pretty valuable, but what I recommend figuring out is the average value of a customer over their lifetime, right? Because if I only average, let's say $50 or $60 or $75 from a customer over their lifetime, then spending $101 to acquire a new customer is not a recipe that is going to scale. That's not sustainable. But I happen to know that my customer lifetime value is more like $270 per customer, right? And it's even higher for my OG members. So knowing that means I can continue to run this ad because the customer lifetime value exceeds the cost per customer, right? So again, I am not an ads specialist, but this is the way that I approach and use this information. And I love to shine a light on it because I think it really is more valuable than people give it credit for. And this section is the key to making informed decisions about which marketing strategies you pursue and which ones you might decide to close up. Now, the final thing I will say here is that you may have noticed when I went to view and edit that there are a bunch of lead sources in here that A, might be garbage, or B, might look like junk. Some of them I have definitely created. Some of them I have definitely not created. And if you go to look at your own lead sources, you may have created none, but you might see that there's a whole bunch of them there, right? So I need to talk just briefly about how these lead sources are created and what you should do about the garbage ones that are there. How they are created is anytime a contact interacts with the tracking script, it automatically creates a lead source based on where that contact came from, right? And if you have never put the tracking script on your website, you might be thinking, well, how are these lead sources being created? And the answer is that the tracking script is included automatically in any Keap web forms, any Keap order forms, or any of the other native Keap assets that you may be using are automatically going to use that tracking script. And so these lead sources may have been accumulating without you even noticing. Now, I also want to talk about the nature of some of them being junk or some of them looking like garbage, right? And the reason for that is because a lot of the traffic on the internet is bots. Bots that are crawling different pages, bots that are, analyzing websites for different things, or bots that are, spam, filling out web forms with spam and junk submissions, things like that. So those bots count as traffic, and oftentimes these lead sources are created because of where the bot came from when they loaded your website. The tracking script can't tell the difference between a bot and a human. So there is going to be a certain amount of junk or garbage in these lead sources. The truth is, you can comb through here and delete them. You can try to purge those out manually. I don't spend a lot of time or energy on it because the way that I interact with lead sources is not through that page. It's here in the ROI section. And what I'll usually do is filter that report for specific lead sources that I want to track. Like, let's look at my Campaign Builder Finishing School webinar. And so if you filter that, you're only seeing, this one is actually earning a negative ROI. So just to keep myself honest, I was showing you a positive 400%. Here is a negative ROI, but you're only seeing one lead source at a time. You're only seeing the targeted amount of information, or even if you display all of them, once you sort it, you've got the ones that you're spending money on, the ones that you're focused on bubbled up to the top. So as annoying as it can be to have the stress or the garbage lead sources there, I wouldn't stress out about it simply because it's bound to happen. It's sort of the nature of how this works, and most of your time and energy is probably going to be spent working with the section of the data that is valuable and is going to inform your decision. All right, so there you have it. That is an overview of visitors, the visitor record, the web analytics section or web profile section of the contact record, as well as the lead source section and the lead source ROI reports. There's a lot there, and you may not need every single aspect of this video, but my philosophy is to give you the information of how these tools work and then let you make the decision as to whether or not they are a fit for you now, later, or at all. Now, if you want more of this type of training, this video was plucked from one of my courses, the Max Classic Starter Kit course, which is a foundational training for people with the Max Classic version of Keap. You can unlock that course for free at isstarterkit.com. IS because it was previously known as Infusionsoft, but the Max Classic Starter Kit, you can unlock it at isstarterkit.com. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Take care.